So, welcome to this another one of those EPAC Seasonal review series that I think I first showed to you last week. And this one's going to be on 2012 Pacific Hurricane season, which was actually a pretty interesting season, and from the perspective of trackers at the time, this was only a couple years ago, it overall was a pretty decent season. I mean, the season kind of started off with a bang. So in 2012, in the beginning of 2012, there was expectations that an El Nino event would develop across the Eastern Pacific, and of course that never happened. There was an expectation that it would. So expectations were somewhat robust. And I can say I was hoping for something that would resemble between 2002 and 2009 and 2000. Was kind of my expectation, and the only reason why I was that conservative because one, the El Nino event was supposed to be relatively weak. PDO was supposed to be very negative. It was supposed to be very negative, and overall conditions in the Eastern Pacific didn't seem that favorable. However, I think in general, at least compared to 2006 and 2009. And that was more of expecting the season between 2002 and 2009. However, the season got to a pretty interesting start. I mean, there was and preseason there was two invests right before May 15th. One of which developed on May 14th into tropical storm Atlanta. Then later that month you had Hurricane Bud, which at that time was considered a rare event since it was a rare major hurricane. And Bud was kind of a very strange storm. It was a forecasting nightmare. It was one of the few forecasting nightmares of that pretty straightforward hurricane season. It was an absolute nightmare for the forecast. I mean, at the beginning, the system appeared that it was going to head right into Mexico as a major hurricane. Then he backed off of that and did not show Bud becoming a hurricane at all, and had storms staying offshore. Ended up becoming a major hurricane before the mid-level circulation of Bud got pushed inland. That caused it to rapidly degenerate, like right offshore. And it was a combination due to the land spitting it out and increased wind shear. And Bud had a very unexpected demise. Then you had Hurricane Carlotta, Then you had Hurricane Carlotta. Hold on. Excuse me a minute. Then you had Hurricane Carlotta, it was actually a busted invest in late May that looked like it was formed, but sheer increased on it all of a sudden. And you often get that with the ITC, it was near the ITCZ. You often get that with ITCZ systems that develop unexpectedly but dissipate just as quickly. So it doesn't come as any significant surprise. Inside, though it caused a bit of a debate at that time. Then you had Hurricane Carlotta, which once again kind of rapidly deepened as it made landfall. It officially has a 95 knot Cat 2, 95 at peak, then weakened ahead to 90 knots, even though I don't really agree with it weakening. Now, even though in my opinion, to be honest, since hurricane hunters found what was in range of the reconnaissance planes, which initially wasn't too impressive, but it showed a rapidly intensifying tropical storm. Not tropical storm, it showed a rapidly intensifying hurricane on its second pass, I believe, and there's been a lot of speculation. The storm, in my opinion, since the CMS AETs were at Category 4 stranded system, at least should have been considered for an upgrade 2 Category 3 hurricane, in my opinion, probably honestly at least briefly was. Oh, stupid automobile. In my opinion, at least briefly, might have briefly been a Category 3 hurricane. It's still subject to some debate. I mean, Carolina. And after Carolina, the season's fast started continuing with Hurricane Daniel, which initially didn't do much early on. However, the system was able to thrive in a warm ocean, low seas. I mean, not a warm ocean, a low shear, low wind shear environment. Even with some dry air in the way, it was able to survive and blossom into a major hurricane. And really defied a lot of forecasts and defied a lot of expectations, and because no one really expected anything more like a weak tropical storm or at most a minimal hurricane. It felt like it was going to be a system that was going to be very boring. Now, Ivan was pretty keen on it not being too much of a storm, but Daniel defied the odds. And that kind of elevated expectations for Hurricane Amelia. The next system, even it's kind of an interesting comparison between Hurricanes Daniel and Amelia. Hurricanes Andres and Blanca in my mind because Blanca and Amelia both somewhat performed below expectations. They're actually relatively similar. I mean, Blanca was obviously upblowing issues. I mean, and the upblowing issues and the ERC timing, while Amelia's failure was mostly due to an ERC timing. Even though both storms managed to rebound, Blanca had, more, in my opinion, a more impressive rebound. And at least was the earliest known instance of a tropical storm making landfall in Baja California. So, however, I will compare Andres and Daniel to Blanca and Amelia because both Andres and Daniel raised expectations for the next one, which weren't exact, at least in my eyes, which weren't exactly met. Because after all, Andres made a serious run at Category 5 status. The other one was like, oh, why not Blanca? And Amelia also was like a Category 5 bet for a while, just because the system was in such a favorable environment, but that, unfortunately, never panned out. And then you had Hurricane Fabio, which also made a run at a major hurricane. I mean, it appeared to have peaked, much like Hurricane Fausto in 08. But then unexpectedly weakened. Not weakened, unexpectedly strengthened. Even though that storm was probably one of the easiest storms the NC has ever had to forecast, so I recall correctly. You also had a 90% bust near the intertropical inversion zone between Fabio and Gilma. Then Gilma was a major, and Gilma became a major hurricane. In early August. And Gilma became a hurricane in early August. It wasn't much of a storm. Hector form was very, very large. It was kind of a form partially from the remnants from a tropical pressure along the Mexican coast that was partially spanned by the remnants of Hurricane Ernesto. Then, after Hector, you kind of had a lull in activity because the Atlantic kind of took over, and it appeared the season was like another bust again. Like, lots of questioning, lots of skeptics, but MGO kind of arrived in time to salvage the basin around mid to late August when the Atlantic began to quiet down after MGO kind of left the basin a little bit. As a result, it kind of blossomed Eastern Pacific blossomed once again. The Eastern Pacific kind of blossomed once again. It had Hurricane Lenia, which I mean was a pretty typical low in Category 1. Then you had Tropical Storm John. Then what was the K-Storm even? That Tropical Storm Chrissy, which actually appeared like it was going to arrive for a while. But obviously it appeared like the storm was getting recorded, but just never really had the time to do so. We had Hurricane Lane, which was a fairly short-lived hurricane, pretty boring. I mean, the seasons were pretty boring. And then to kind of salvage the season a little bit, you had Hurricane Miriam, which kind of shocked everyone a little bit. Kind of exceeded expectations, and kind of somewhat resembled Hurricane Hernan from 2008. And Miriam was a pretty classic late season EPAC major hurricane. Yeah, the storm developed its core very quickly. And, I mean, the system intensified above expectations. Even though at that point in time there wasn't a lot of interest in Miriam. Just because at the end of the season, like around late September and October, interest starts to wane. A lot of the energy was focused on tracking the very busy Atlantic season. And trackers in late September and October, if you haven't been with us through multiple hurricane seasons now, you notice it that around, I mean, they're usually pretty enthusiastic in the months of May, June, July, August, into most of September. Then, you know, it kind of just goes blah. It's just very blah. That's not partially kind of why I kind of like enjoy the month of July the most, when you're like still a ways away from the peak of the season. You know, like the climax is yet to arrive. You know, people are excited, and the future of the East Pacific looks bright. Then yeah, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the Miriam kind of weakened though. Actually, before I forget, yeah, quite a few interesting model runs, because in September 2012, a patterning emerged that favored troughing, like, right off the west coast of the United States, and that favored the large systems being sent out to sea, but kind of turning, like, well offshore the bar California coast, and allowed for extended heavy rain, with extended moisture from the remnants of several tropical cyclones to make it to California and the Baja California Peninsula. In fact, Hector got some heavy damage. From these were toward sides along the Baja California Peninsula. And then after and Miriam kind of declined pretty quickly, even though it actually stayed a remnant low and kind of meandered a bit for an unusually large period of time, similar to Hurricane Marie in 2008, if you guys actually remember that. And then, about Norman. Then the next system was Tropical Norman. That was like kind of a system that was expected to bust, but developed at the last minute, even though it actually failed and weakened rapidly right before landfall as a tropical depression. Tremens did end up giving heavy rains to Texas. And after a pause of a couple of weeks in early to mid-October, you had Tropical Storm Olivia, and then you had Hurricane Paul, which was actually a pretty exciting storm because formed off the west coast of Mexico, then steadily intensified. Kind of appeared like track forecast was going to stay offshore. Then it became a major hurricane all of a sudden. I was like, wow, man. The track started to shift towards Baja again. Watches and warnings went up for the Baja California Peninsula. Weekend then re-intensified, and all of a sudden it looked like really bleak. All of a sudden, because the special advisory had re-increased intensity to 95 knots. And it appeared for a while Paul was going to become a major hurricane again. That was a pretty exciting last hurrah, even though Paul kind of weakened towards landfall, and arguably, I think, officially missed. Even though the system managed to stall ashore, and that's how it's like much of the Baja California coast, in an interesting fashion, got lashed with hurricane force winds for several hours. And the last storm of the season was Tropical Storm Rosa, and that crew was overshadowed by Sandy, and that was pretty weak. There was a little bit more. It formed a bit further west than most storms, really late season storms do. So, that was it for the So season overall, she's ended up with a pretty average season with new average race, new average count, new average stats. But overall, I mean, it was kind of a good example. We're still a pretty decent, trackable, solid season to watch at the moment. Had some highs and lows, but there are plenty of worse seasons out there than 2012 PHS. Kind of a good example on how an even average season, at least in my opinion, can be pretty solid. That'll wrap up this much longer than expected video. This is today's replacement video because the tropics are relatively dead right now. That'll wrap this up. I will probably have my monthly outlook release on, I know it's late in the month, but I'll have it out in like late June. So like on Friday I'm thinking. I'll probably have a regular update video on Thursday. Who knows, maybe I'll do a regular daily video and an outlook video on the same day. You know what, that actually sounds like a good idea. So for my outlook video, look for it either Thursday. If I do not have the time, I'll do it Friday. If I don't have the time Friday, I'll do it Saturday. But I'm thinking I'll probably get it on Thursday, maybe Friday. That'll do it for today. Hope you guys enjoy this continuation of the EPAC Seasonal series. Bye.